All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Locker Room Podcast. We got a great one for you guys today. Appreciate you guys, all the listeners, just, as we're starting out this podcast and trying to think of new topics and listening to some of the feedback and the comments that you guys leave on it is super helpful for what you guys want to hear. And this is one that we've been thinking about for a little while. And I've been thinking about it myself. And I was trying to think who would be a great person to talk to about this. And we're going to be talking today to one of my best friends, Cody Massey. He's going to introduce himself in a minute here, but today we're all going to be talking about coaching boys to men, and maybe in the future one day we'll get a female coach on here talking about coaching girls to women. But today is all about how do we use our coaching platform to not just find success on the field and develop these players on the field, but develop them for life, develop them as they grow. Some of us are starting with kids super young. Some of us have high school kids, maybe even college kids. But at some point, that game's going to come to an end for them. They're going to have to deal with life. They're going to have families. They're going to have responsibilities. But what can we do as a coach to prepare them for that? Not just how to teach them how to hit home runs and throw strikes, but what else can we do? So that's a little preview of what we're going to talk about. But first, I'm going to toss it over to Cody here. He's going to introduce himself and tell you guys a little bit about what he's been up to.
Yeah, so first, honored to be considered one of your best friends, Vincenzo. So my favorite story about you is just like watching you propose to your now wife, Michelle, at an apple farm in Belleville, Illinois.
Yep.
It was epic. But yeah, so I'm currently in the Metro East of St. Louis. I have a wife, Hannah, and three boys, 5, 2, and 3 months old, Boone, Banks, and Baker. We call them the
He's
Killer Bees. Yeah, we call them
yeah.
the Killer Bees. So if any baseball fans out there, the Astros, I'm not an Astros fan at all, but it just came about that we named our kids with bees. And so, so I am currently transitioning kind of roles in my life as far as coaching and baseball and stuff like that. I've been a travel baseball director for the past 7 years. Got into that straight out of my playing career in college. And then I am currently a head coach of a Christian high school over here as well. It's actually linked on to the church that I attend. So really good fit that God's placed me into. But no, just super excited to jump on your podcast. I know we talk pretty often, but it's cool to just dive into what you're doing with FCA out there and get into that. So
Yeah. Why don't you give us a little background on some of your FCA experience? Because I know you've been involved with FCA out there near you, and obviously here, being a director, we're still brand new to the area. Right? It's only been about 2.5 years, so it might look a little bit different from what you guys do. But just give us a little bit background on maybe kind of how you got involved with FCA and some of the things you've done with them.
Yep, FCA out here is awesome. I mean, it's very big. We have an incredible staff here in our Metro East FCA. I first got involved probably in high school, so we had huddles at my school, and like the first time you go into a huddle, it's kind of like intimidating. You don't know what to expect, and then you get there and you leave that night just super fired up. You have new friends, meet new people, and then so it's kind of been that way ever since. And so fast forward into college, I was at a JUCO, and they didn't have FCA, and me and my roommate ended up starting up a huddle
Hmm.
at the college that I attended, and so through that, I got to meet some awesome staff, and again, like we've had people from Cody Terry to Tim Casey, and now we have Mark Oberhauser, Eddie Sutton, Corbin, Kelsey. We just have an incredible staff of people that have impacted my life greatly, but they're just doing great work here in the Metro East. So FCA is definitely prevalent here. It's strong. There's just a really good community with that, and I still now I'm still involved with FCA. So I help on a fellowship committee there, where you run an event every year, bring in like a speaker, they have lunch, and it fundraises for our local FCA. So I'm still involved. There's actually an FCA golf outing coming up this week. We're
Nice.
all super excited about. So yeah, FCA is big out here.
So maybe you and Hannah can fly out in September when we have our golf outing.
There you go. Yeah, as long as I get to tee off with you, I wanna watch you golf, dude. That'd be epic.
No, you don't. You watched me golf once and it wasn't pretty. So what and just to give you guys a background too, like Cody and his wife were super impactful for me and my wife when we were living out there for a while. And not just friendship, but like also our relationship with the Lord. And they were a huge part of our testimony. And Cody's actually uh, gave me like my first real coaching position as his assistant. And so that's kind of how I got involved with it. And I didn't really know much about FCA back then. And I think the program that you were with, like you guys were somewhat involved with FCA, but not as big as it ended up being. And that was like really my first introduction to like faith-based coaching. And that just set me on a different projection for the rest of my life for the next couple of years after that. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity there. Great for you guys, but even more excited about what we're about to dive into today because I think this is right up your alley about how you live your life as a coach on and off the field, and you realize there's more to coaching than just the X's and O's piece of it. So let's just dive right in here. Um, and so I know you deal with a lot of coaches. You see a lot of coaches on a regular basis, all different levels, mainly baseball and softball, but from different sports as well. What would you say is like the average, or how society defines the role of a coach?
Yeah, I think like just with youth sports in general, like the bar is set so low. It's like, hey, I just want a guy that's gonna show up. I don't have to babysit my kid here. As long as the coach is on time and he semi knows the game that he's coaching, like we're good. Even like my 5-year-old is involved in a local rec soccer, and like the director is sending out like they're begging for coaches. So like
Yeah.
literally you show up and put a shirt on, like that's pretty much the bar when it comes to youth coaches. So I think that like that's what society expects is, man, I would just love my kid to play for somebody that knows the game and is
Mm,
going to show up and be consistent, those types of things. So I think that's probably the bar, to be honest, and it's unfortunate because there's so much more that goes into it. I'm sure we're going to get into it, but that's probably the standard right now.
yeah. So this next question, we're definitely gonna unpack a little bit here. But just like you say, like they're just looking for people to show up sometimes, and it gets me thinking. Like I started to build a relationship with a coach out of high school here, and he's a wrestling guy. Like he went to D1 wrestling, and like that was his sport. And then he came back, and now he's working for a high school, and they were like, hey, like we need an assistant for football. He's like, okay, he's done some football in the past. And then they're like, hey, we also need a head coach for our modified lacrosse. And he's like, I've never played a day in my life. And they're like, we just need someone to go out there. And so like the last 2 years, he's just had to learn how to like coach a lacrosse team out of nowhere, from wrestling to lacrosse. Very obviously extremely different. But you're right. I think it does take a special person to step into a coaching role and actually like care about the role that they're in. So that's going to be kind of our next question. I think we'll kind of is going to be like a rolling question, but what do you define the role of a coach as, you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head of just like someone that cares. I like it's a role in their life. It's not, the athlete's parents. It's not a teacher. I mean, it's literally somebody that's teaching them a skill that they love, but also somebody that can impact their life in ways that just go beyond any sport. And
Mhm.
so I think that role is can't be carried lightly. There's conversations there and growth there that's way beyond the game and the opportunities to really impact a kid's life. And so when I think back to even just my career, I mean that's what shaped me. My parents, I was blessed to be raised by incredible parents, but my coaches impacted me, and my youth pastors, all these people that were outside of my house were impacting me in
Mm,
ways that were just way beyond anything that was expected of them. So I think that as long as the heart's in the right place, just like you just mentioned that gentleman that's coaching multiple sports, it's like that guy probably just loves kids and loves impacting kids, and he'll do whatever he can to figure out how to teach them the right ways to play the game. But the heart posture comes first. So
yeah. And even better, he's getting ready to come on staff with FCA with us. So
there you go.
that's what we're looking for. Um, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Yes, we want to see coaches that actually know what they're talking about and can actually develop kids, especially when you get to like higher levels, club ball, like elite travel ball, to some degree, high school ball, of course. Um, but like even at the little league level, like you can get away with stuff if like you keep you're someone's dad and you didn't play since high school, like you get away with a little bit, right? But it really is at that age, like that super youth level, is really just like caring about the kids and making it fun, um, and just like making it so those kids want to come back next week. And I was actually just speaking to a couple people at a church this week, and I was just explaining a little bit about FCA and the role of a coach and how we work to encourage them. And he shared a story about how he was playing little league and he didn't have a father in his life, and so he really didn't have a positive male role model. But then he got enrolled in little league, didn't really want to be there. He was a really bad player, like he had no business playing. He basically said, but he's like this one coach like really invested in him and like built him up and gave him confidence that he put him at different positions all the time when he thought he couldn't play there. He's like, by the end of that season, he's like, he just felt so comfortable. Like he wanted to get there. Or he wanted to show up to the field every single day. Like he wanted to be around that coach. And thinking now, I mean, I don't know how old he is now, but midlife and thinking about what it was like at 8 years old because one person invested in him. Like that's that's what we're trying to get coaches to understand. Like it might not be right in that moment that you're going to make or break this kid's life, but 10 years down the road, like when they're looking back, they're going to remember you. And we hope that it's for good reasons.
Yep. You hit it on the head right there with just like getting them excited to show up every day. I'm a nobody, man. Like I played junior college baseball and Division II baseball. Like people aren't showing up because I played pro ball and I'm going to get them
Yeah.
whatever, like into Major League Baseball. Like they don't show up for that. They're showing up because like they truly know I care about that kid, and I'm going to empty the tank with those kids every single time I'm with them.
Mhm.
And whether that's when I'm with them or I'm going to check in with them during the week and all this stuff, like genuinely like caring about your kids, not just when they're showing up to your practice, but like are you looking out for those kids all the time? Do you have their best interests in mind? I think the coaches that do that really well are the ones that are going to get buy-in immediately and buy-in that's going to last forever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of coaches that do it, and again a lot of coaches that poured into me, and that's basically what shaped me into what I am now. So
Yeah. I've heard it. I don't know where the first time I heard this, but I'm sure many people have. Is they say that kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and
yep.
that's so true. I mean, they like, yeah, like obviously, if you're a pro player or something like that, they're gonna like want to listen to you more, but that's not usually the case for most coaches. So just like I think it's early on in the coach athlete relationship. Like if you can really show them that like you care about them, not just like the number on their back, or the stats that they're putting up. If you show that early on, you're going to be able to build that relationship, and then the physical side of it and the on field success will come from there. But you got to be able to build that relationship. So I think we would agree that sports. Um, there's so many lessons that can be learned from sports, and you talk with like companies and like their recruiters and HR departments. Like if you have, if especially like a collegiate athlete, if that's on your resume, like they love to see that because there's certain things, right? There's teamwork, there's discipline, there's routine, like there's all these things that kind of come out of coaching. But how do you think we can coaches can kind of translate a lesson on the field, right? So for us, baseball, how can we translate a lesson that we're instilling on the field to off the field?
Yeah, I think baseball is one of the like top sports for being able to do that just because the highs and lows are constant. They're quick. Some of them are quick, some of them are like long term. Like for instance, a kid can go up and strike out his first three at bats. He's at the lowest of lows in the dugout. He's wanting to pout. He's wanting to throw his helmet. He's wanting to do all those things. But like coaching him through that stuff, like the emotional side of what he's going through, to get him to turn the page. And then like, hey, we have a fourth at bat and the last inning with 2 outs. Like you can really pick up your team here. Like he hits a walk off.
Hmm.
Right. Like now he's at the highest of highs. Like that kid went through the lowest of low and the highest of high in a span of a couple hours. So coaching the emotional sides of that, and that's going to translate into their life. Like hey, maybe I have my dream job and I lost my dream job, or maybe whatever. I had some tragic thing happen in my life. Like I know how to balance that and navigate that. And like for me, I'm trying to instill those things with a faith background.
Hmm.
Right? It's trying to get them to understand that like hey, this is just a game. Like, this is how you're going to navigate life is through God's word. And so instilling that in my practices is definitely one that's, I use baseball as a platform to translate
Sure.
into their life, but ultimately give them the gospel. So
Yeah, yeah, you're using a literal field as your mission field.
bingo,
Yeah.
nothing
Um,
better.
so for you then, with your team, players you coach, what's something that you see that you want to see an improvement from the first day of practice to the last day of the season outside of the physical component? Like, sure, we want to be able to see our batting averages go up or ERAs go down, but what are you looking for outside of the physical component? And mean, like, taking into consideration, like, it could be a long season, right? So for you, we're doing club ball and stuff like that was a lot of what you did. That's like summer to fall, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say, like, I mean, you're right. I mean, every day we're gonna show up, like, I want them to throw harder, hit harder, run faster, stuff like that. But I would say, like, the word that comes to mind for me is just like professionalism.
Hmm.
Like, I want my kids to get some growth and maturity and how they speak to adults, how they communicate, how they dress, how their shirts are tucked in, like just growing in professionalism with how they do things, taking pride in just little things that they do. And that doesn't mean like I'm a military guy, like, hey, let's make your bed perfect every day, like all those things. But just getting them to mature a little bit in how they go about things, how they are as teammates, how they communicate. Those are big things that I would say, like, just kind of all encompass into just professionalism. Like, whether or not the kid hits 400 or 200, I want him to leave from playing with me just way more professional about how he goes about things. So,
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good way to put it. I remember a couple weeks ago, we lost a game, and a bunch of my boys were like, they were upset, like we really should have won, and and the time limit got to us, right, so we didn't get our last at bats, and we thought we were starting to make a comeback, and it was to go to the championship game basically, and we lost it. And at the end, like, we're walking out of the dugout, getting ready to do like our post game meeting, and I'm hearing a bunch of them like, "Oh, we should be there. We deserve to be there. We deserve to be there." And in that moment, like, I had prepared of like, hey, like, these are the things that we didn't get done in the game, and like, so we were going to harp on them a little bit. But as I'm hearing this out of the dugout, like, I had a switch. I'm like, okay, like, this is one of the teachable moments. um Number one, sidebar, I do think as coaches, especially young coaches, sometimes we think everything we have to say needs to be like a life altering like message, and it doesn't need to be. Like, sometimes we could just, what is going to be what it is, right? But this was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, like, I think this is a teachable moment here. And so I just told him, like, hey, like, do you deserve to be in there? I don't know, but we don't deserve a lot of what we have in our life, right? And that allowed me to point to Jesus about how we don't deserve to be living the life that we do. But it also got me to be able to point to like a real world life lesson of, it's not about what you deserve, but it's about what you earn. And there's going to be times that things aren't fair, right? Like, you're going to be passed up on a job, you're going to lose that raise, you're going to lose a family member. Like, those things aren't fair. Do you deserve that or not? That's not for me to decide. But like, success is something that you have to earn, right? And then we got into like, hey, we didn't do these couple things, and that's why we didn't earn that. But I just feel like if you can find those moments in a game, those are the ones that, like, hopefully they're going to be taken, because that is a real world application. You have to go out and earn the position that you want. You have to go out and earn the lifestyle that you want. You have to go out and earn those things. It's not just something that is going to get handed to you, essentially.
yeah, and those are typically the things too, like, athletes will actually listen to and take notice. If you're the guy, like, I'm the guy that, like, after a game, a lot of games, I don't even meet with the team after the game because it's like, hey, like, whatever I have to say to you, like, that had to do with the game, like, we can just talk about our practice. Like, right now, it's gonna be in one ear, out the other. Like, you're thinking about going to the ice cream parlor after this. So,
Yeah.
like, so, but when you have those moments where God's pinging you, like, hey, you need to speak up here and translate something to life. Most of the time, those guys are gonna remember that forever anyway, right? If you're just talking about, hey, we walked 20 guys today. That's why we lost. It's like those dudes don't care. Like, they know they
Yeah.
walked guys. They know they made errors. Like, so just that's an encouragement to coaches too, is like, listen to the pings of like what needs to come out of your heart, not out of your mind. Because
Mm.
again, there's times where you're frustrated or you want to coach up those things and after the fact, and it's like they're not gonna remember that. Just
Yeah.
save your notes, bring it to practice.
Yeah. 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 I think too, it's like, it is important for I feel like there's sometimes like a stigma around Christian coaches that we're just gonna be like super nice and like, it's gonna be like kind of pushover. But I don't think it needs to be like that. Like, man, like I've coached with you on the field and I've seen how competitive you get and like how upset you get and things and like, we're still human, like we're allowed to like, blow up and we're gonna lose our mind sometimes, but it's how we deal with that. But I think as Christian coaches, like we kind of said it before, like yes, we want to teach lessons, but also we do want to like we have a plan when we go to practice. Like it's not just, hey, how can I teach life lessons? How can I just share like my faith? But I think it is important for coaches to understand, like, hey, you still need to be good at your job. Like, you still do need to develop the physical side of the player because if you're not doing that stuff, if you're not learning, if you're not continuing to gain knowledge, then you're not going to be on that field very long as a coach. And we want our Christian coaches there for as long as they can.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we wanna win. Like, as Christians, it's like, I wanna pursue excellence, and that
Sure.
means, like, I'm better than you. Like, I'm gonna beat you in this sport. Like, I'm pursuing excellence in that way. Like, I wanna win. So,
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of that, like, cupcake Christianity, whatever. Like they're selling Jesus, not living it, you know? And
Mm.
it's like, man, if we're truly gonna live it, we're gonna pursue excellence in every single thing we do. And that comes down to the itinerary of how we tie our shoes. You know, it's like I want to tie my shoes better than the other team because I'm representing and glorifying God here. So yeah, that's a good point.
I remember watching a video from Demario Davis, the linebacker for the Saints, and he said he's a big FCA guy, and he kind of did an interview, and he was like, off the field, like I'm gonna be that lion or that lamb, like I'm gonna be gentle, right, and like I'm gonna be soft spoken. He's like, but as soon as I strap up the helmet, and I get on the field, he's like, I'm gonna be a lion out there, like I'm trying to hit you as hard as I possibly can, like that is the point of the game, and I think sometimes we just need to help Christians realize like, hey, like you can go out there and you can be competitive. Like it is okay. Like it's allowed.
Yeah. And Jesus was both, man. Like he's the same Jesus that was healing, the blind and stuff like that is the same Jesus that was flipping tables. So
Yeah.
he did both and he did it perfectly. I'm not saying that we can, but we definitely have to have both attributes to that for sure.
So how much of your personal life do you let your players see?
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it, man. Like all of it. I put on social media. Like I want them to know my kids. I want them to know my wife. I want them to come to my house for team dinners. I want them to see all my personal life because ultimately, like if I feel like I am living for Christ and following Christ to the best of my ability, like I want them to see how that flows, how to
Mm.
do that, how to live that. Um, all of it. Yes.
Yeah. I love like especially now we have a daughter, and so this is the first season that I'm coaching that I have a daughter on the sideline. And like I love being able to go up to her before a game, and I love being able to like hold her after a game or whatever it is. But like even before this year, like I always made it intentional. Like my wife always comes to the games, right? And so I want my coaches or my players to see like after the game, like yeah, I'm carrying the balls and I'm carrying everything else, but then I'm also going to go over. I'm going to carry my wife's chair right to the car, or like now, right? Like now I'm like a pack mule. I got a million things because we have the baby, but like I want them to see that stuff, and I want them to see me interact with my wife and my daughter in a positive light. And even though yeah, we're locked in, it's baseball. Like I can take 5 minutes and I can go be with my family because that's important in between games. And so I think it is important for them to see that side of us because I don't know what all my players' backgrounds look like. I don't know about all the like I know a lot of the parents. I have an idea of what their home life is, but I don't know how strong their dads are in their life, or I don't know what they're being instilled. So if they can see me doing that stuff and be like, oh wow, like he's a young coach, I respect him, but he really cares about his family. Like that's the stuff that I also want them to see. Plus, I'm not gonna lie, like my mission field on the weekends is the same thing as a baseball field, and like my wife's mission field is those sidelines with those parents, man.
Yep. No doubt. She's got it. She's got probably a tougher mission field than you, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. So like with that, with the parent piece of it, what do you think a healthy coach parent relationship looks like?
Hmm. I think setting expectations from the get go is probably the most important thing. I mean, if
Mm,
everything's just in like on paper in front of them, they know what to expect and like they know what to expect out of you, but then like also you're putting your expectations on them. Like even things simple like the 24-hour rule, right? If a parent
Mm,
has an issue with something that happened in the game, like they sit on it 24 hours. But the same thing works for the coaches too. You know, if there's something that a family's doing or a kid does and you're upset about it, like, hey, go sleep on it for a day,
yeah.
pray about it, whatever you need to do, and then go to the table civilly or whatever that is. But just setting expectations as far as timeliness and all those things that are going to end up coming back to bite you during the season. If those expectations are set from the get go, those conversations and things that take place throughout the year are much better and for all involved. You know, if there's a lot of trust between the parent and the coach and the coach and the family is like it turns out to be a great season, a great year, and there could be a relationship that just blossoms out of that. So
So are you the guy, let's say you're at an away tournament, right? Are you the guy that wants to stay in the opposite hotel across town from all the players and their parents, or are you like in there with them or going to dinner with them? What are you doing? How do you handle that?
yeah, I mean we're team barbecuing in the parking lot guy. You
Yeah.
know, I want to do life with all those people, you know, regardless of maybe what they think of me or what they think of how I'm treating their kid. It's like I know where my heart is when it comes to me coaching their kid. They might disagree with something like, "Hey, my kid should be batting third and he's batting ninth all year."
Yeah.
But I know where my heart is with those kids. So I have no problem getting in the thick of it with the parents and ultimately like growing relationships with them is awesome. I mean, I think back to when we coached together. I still touch base with a lot of those families. Like I'm going golfing with one of them next week, and it's
Yeah.
like I haven't seen this guy in several years. He reaches out wanting to golf. It's like that's really cool. That all stems from just the trust we had in each other as we were going through the process of his son playing baseball, and that's growing relationships and growing friendships through along the way. So
Yeah. I do think a lot of coaches want to put up that wall, right? Of like, don't ever talk to me if you're a parent. I never want to like hear you. I never want to see you. Like, if you didn't even have to come to the game, like that'd probably be best. Like, I feel like a lot of coaches feel that way, and to some degree, like I want the parents to like step back a little bit, especially as my boys get older. Like, I want the kids to be more involved than the parents, like especially talking to me. But I tell my parents at the very beginning of the season, like I'm not that guy that's gonna like do what we just talked about. Like I'm not gonna stay at a separate hotel. Like I'm not gonna like ignore you guys. Like yes, I'm glad that there is a fence around the field so that way, like when I'm coaching them, like let me coach them. But after like as soon as we walk off that field, like if you want to go grab hamburgers together, like okay, let's go do that, right? Because I do think as coaches, it's not just about the players, but we're really coaching families in a sense, and I want them to know who I am. Like I want them to see me on and off the field, right? Because I'm going to be a different person when I'm coaching versus my everyday lifestyle. But I want them to know that. I want them to know me because then they start to trust you, and we want them to trust. Like they're entrusting us with their children for the year, right? And so we want them to feel good about who they're leaving their kids with or who their kids are listening to and things like that. So I think it's very important. I do think expectations need to be set. I think standards need to be set. People need to be held accountable. But I do think like it is an important relationship to not just ignore.
hmm absolutely, and I think the toughest part of that too is being able to do that with all the families, you know, because there's some families that you might have way more in common with them and stuff like that. And like the from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, like he's playing favorites with that family or whatever. And so it's important that like you understand that there's a lot of people watching you navigate relationships. And that doesn't again, it doesn't mean we have to close certain people off because we like them more. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just it's just like because in reality, like we do play favorites. You know, like the kids that show up and do everything you ask of them and whatever you have stuff in common with kids, so kids
yeah.
fish, I fish, all that stuff. It's like I naturally gravitate to people that have commonality. So but it is just important that you balance that and still visit the least of these or all those
Mm.
types of other families that are involved in that team. So
Yeah, that's a good piece. Um, Last piece about just kind of like all the people that like we a lot of coaches just see like okay, I'm just involved with the athlete, right? They only see like point A and point B with them and the athlete. But hugely, I mean, this is said within FCA all the time. Billy Graham said this quote years ago: "A coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person will in an entire lifetime." And you think about that, you're like, okay, like I have 12 kids on my team. Like, really? I'm gonna. But like, no, it's not just those 12 kids. It is those families and how many, it's usually hopefully a mom and a dad, right? And then it's sisters and it's brothers and then it's umpire. And like, there's all these other people that are like being impacted by your life, hopefully in a good way, that we tend to not really think about. Like we said, we just kind of think about our relationship with the athletes. We don't realize everything else that people are watching.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah, that's exactly right. So
yeah,
there's a lot involved there, man. You got to steward it well. So
yeah, yeah. So, where do you see the discipleship process in the coach athlete relationship? And how do you think it affects them in terms of becoming a man, right? Because the whole topic that we're talking about is coaching boys and men. So, at some point, they're going to be out of your program. You're not going to be coaching them anymore. They're going to be grown up. How do you, how do you see that discipleship process like really impacting them later on in life?
yeah, I think it starts with just us, like where are we at in our journey with Christ? It's like if I'm in the Word daily and I'm doing all like I'm following Christ daily, then that's going to show up daily in my walk, right? It's just like how I talked about, I want people to see everything. Like I want them to see everything that I'm doing. It's just like that's fine as long as I'm doing that. I need to make sure that I am, pursuing and picking up my cross daily.
Mm,
Because as I do that, then those people are seeing how to live, how to walk, how to live a godly life, and those things. And then also, I mean, there's systems you can put in place, right? Like for my high school guys, we do a daily devotional every day, and we
mm,
pray every day. And so they're seeing, what that looks like and the fruit of that, by just memorizing scripture. Even like my high school guys, if they memorize the entire chapter Psalm 1, then I cook them a steak at the end of the spring. So like, uh, so like just those things, like you can instill systems as well when it comes to discipling young men. But again, a lot of the times, like when I think back on my past years or things, it's like they're just seeing me live it out daily, and
mhm.
then maybe those things will come up later. Like I had a player that prayed to receive Christ this past winter in my office,
Awesome.
and he reached out to me like out of the blue at like 11 p.m. on a school night. I wasn't even coaching this kid at the time. He just like reaching out like, "Hey, can like I meet with you tomorrow in your office?" And I'm just like, "Yeah." Like I don't know what he wanted. And then like next thing you know, like me and this kid are praying. He's bawling his eyes out in my office and like just kind of spilling the beans on how God's just like tugging on him. And it's like, man, I didn't he didn't get to that point. I didn't have anything to do with that. Like I wasn't, texting him every day, like Bible
Mm,
verse or nothing like that. It's just like I think God was tugging on him in his own way. And then I was just one of the vessels that he knew that, you know, had Jesus in his life. And he approached me. He'd never been to church in his life. He didn't know anybody that reads the Bible outside of me. So it's
mhm.
just like God used me through, him just seeing how I display my godly living. And next thing you know, like this dude is following Christ. And it's really cool. Like when God's using you in those ways, there's just not a better feeling on earth, man.
Man, that's awesome. I think that's so important too, like not just for coaches, man, not just for sports, but as Christians, like we need to like live that out. Like people need to know that we're Christians. Like we shouldn't hide, right? Like don't put the we need to show our light, don't put the shade on the lamp. And it's just like because you don't know who that person is in your life that's like realizes, oh, like they're a Christian, they go to church, they read the Bible, they pray. And just like this kid, he didn't know who else to turn to. And so we want to be that, like we're called to be that person in people's lives. And I just think it's so important that don't hide it, don't be ashamed of it. Like there's nothing to be ashamed. I know in our culture it could be like kind of tricky to navigate, but man, like let people know who Christ is in you and what he's done in your life because like you said, like man, like who's going to be that next kid that comes up to you? Who's going to be that adult that comes up to you and just be like, hey, like I have some questions, or I heard this. Can you help me out? Because we don't want them turning to the internet. We don't know what they're going to find there.
Mhm.
We want them coming to us because hopefully we should be able to feel like we can give them truth or at least point them in the right direction or point them to someone else that can maybe help a little bit more. But man, that's just a life lesson right there. I think for us as Christians, like live it out, man, and like let it be known.
And that's the thing too. Like when you're letting them in to all of it, like they're seeing the bad side of you too, man. Like
Mm,
I'm a sinner just like the rest of them. It's
yeah.
like but how I navigate that sin and like how I go about things is just different than the world. And so like that kid, for instance, like he sees the dirty, like the dirty side of me. You know, like we're on the road all the time. I'm tired, right? Like he sees me get grumpy, and he sees like all those things, like just like you're talking about. He sees me blow up on a kid or whatever. But
Yeah.
like how I navigate that is again spirit led, and so just being able to, again, if your heart posture is right, like out of the heart flows the mouth, and all those other things follow suit. The fruit of the spirit will just be evident in your life. It's just by being in the word daily. So that's my biggest encouragement is like how to disciple kids. Like first, just go be a disciple yourself. Like that's it, and everything else will follow suit. So
Yeah. That's great, and I think you're right. Like, it is important for them to see like the bad side of us too. I think we want to make sure, like, especially we're like, oh, like if I'm going to be the Christian person in their life, like I have to do everything and like no, like show them like you're going to make mistakes too. But like you said, it is how you handle that and like how you go about it once you realize that you made those mistakes, because that's just as important. Because then we become more relatable, right? In the world's eye, because like you said, we're humans, we're sinning all the time, also. Um, so last piece, I know you kind of just gave, a little bit there, but just what's one word of encouragement or, an action item that somebody can do, this week as a coach, um, to share that you can share that when it comes to coaching the players outside of the X's and the O's. If you could give one thing like, hey, like go do this, or like I wish more coaches would do this.
read your Bible.
Mm,
Read your Bible, man. Like that's it. Like I've gone years and years of like I'm a Christian and all this stuff, and like wear the Jesus T-shirt and show up at church on Sunday morning and sing praise and all that stuff, and then I walk out the door like I don't read my Bible. So
yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you want to get close to God and understand like His plans for your life, like get in His Word. Like that's how He's speaking to you through His Word. So it's like there's times where He'll scream at you that's not through His Word, and I just went through one of those times. Like transition in this job, like I went through one of those things. It's like
Mhm.
God screamed at me, but get in His Word daily. Like that's my biggest encouragement to any coach. It's like you can go sell Jesus all you want, but until you're living with Him daily, it's not going to work. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Good piece. Um, And then I would say too, just for coaches, like we have a responsibility, not just an opportunity, but we have a responsibility to really like impact these kids on a higher level than we realize. And so I would encourage you, Christian coaches, like, hey, like just go do it. Like challenge yourself, step out in faith a little bit. It might be scary, especially if you're in a public school or something like that, but let it be known because you're probably going to realize that there's a lot more Christians around you than you really think, but it just takes one person to kind of step up and like make it known. And so I think that's an important part for me, at least, is like that's a huge encouragement. And I'm trying to empower coaches through my job with FCA of like go live like you're in this role for a reason, and like go do that because you are coaching somebody's future husband, like you're coaching somebody's future dad or wife or mom or whatever it might be. Like these kids are going to have responsibilities and families at some point down the line, and we're just hoping that the year that we have with them, the 4 years that we have with them, that we're helping them on that journey. We're going to be one piece of the puzzle, but we're hoping that we're helping them on that journey, and discovering Christ and who that is also.
Yep.
So,
Bingo.
man, I love talking with you about this stuff, Cody. I mean, I'm sure you and I are going to continue these conversations, but I'm glad that you were able to join us for today. I think this is an important piece, for the coaches, the maybe a piece that people are missing, and I think this is going to be really helpful to people that are listening. I think this not only relates to coaches specifically, but I think we can take a lot of what we just discussed today and just live it, right? Like it could just be as a parent, it could just be as a coworker, like it could be any of those things. But there's people around you, there's people watching you, and you don't know what the impact is that you're gonna have around them.
Yep. Exactly.
All
Hey,
right.
I do want to plug something real quick. So one of
Yeah.
my old players, he makes these hats here. Okay.
Okay.
So this
Sweet
is
hat.
called these are the Lone Lamb Project is the name of his company. So he's actually going to be an incoming freshman in college.
Okay.
So the Lone Lamb Project, every sale goes also to help support some local prison ministries.
Mm,
So super cool. One of my players uh, built this business, but wanted to plug them because they make sick hats. They're like the most comfortable hat ever, and they have all different colors and stuff. But Lone Lamb Project, check them out. Cole McCluskey is the player. You actually might remember him. He was
I
around
do.
back
I
when
remember
back in the year.
yeah.
So yeah, so super cool. Again, just never know what some of these kids are going to be up to someday, and it's fun to be a part of the journey with them. So
Absolutely. We'll throw a link or something in the description
yeah,
here so people can go check that stuff out for sure. Love doing that.
cool.
All right, man. Thank you so much. And everyone, thanks for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode when we dive into more of our faith and sports and how they just coexist. So thank you guys. Appreciate you, Cody. And we'll see you guys all soon.